Let's start recording.
Okay,
Okay,
yeah.
good. How are you doing today?
I'll do you a favor here. I don't want to give you epileptic seizures here with the ceiling fans. Let me turn this off here. I don't want that. Yeah, with the fan oscillating in the background, it kind of creates a strangeness with the lights there. All right.
So how's it going today?
It's going well. A little hectic. Just finishing my notes and getting packed up, and we could be there for a short time or a long time. So a lot of contingencies going through your head right now. But I'd rather have them going through my head than worrying about than watching it as a spectator, I guess.
Exactly. Well, welcome to Cut the Deck podcast. I am your host, Isaiah Foji, and we have Andy Demetra, the voice of the Jackets. I secretly want his job, but that's another topic for another day. I think we talked about where we started on the phone, but where are you mentally? I guess watching when Passion first came in to his 5th year and seeing that he planned on getting in the tournament, where are you mentally, and are you satisfied with what you've seen?
It's been very fulfilling to watch this team over the course of this season, because when Josh Pastner first took the job, and my first year at Tech was Josh's first year.
Wow.
He said, this is a major rebuild. It's going to take 5 years, and my goal at the end of that 5th year is to get us to the NCAA tournament. And to see him fulfill that vision, even though there were some times this year where the chances look slim, it's really gratifying, because if you get to know Josh for any length of time, he's truly one of the good guys in coaching.
Right.
And he's cultivated a roster that not only is really experienced and really talented, but they're really likable as well. And so you cheer their success as well, knowing that they've fulfilled a goal that they've had since they were kids, that when the odds were long, they still held together and put together this win streak to get them on to Selection Sunday and now dancing in Indianapolis. So mentally, it's just been really rewarding, and I'm excited to see them mix it up in what's a very tough quadrant. But, from watching this team all season long, the one thing you can never claim they're not is tough.
Right. I think as an avid fan, I feel like I'm a part of it. When we won, I felt like I was so a part of it. I remember my first Georgia Tech game was I'm well acquainted with Josh Okogie. So the first game, I remember telling him I'm coming to see him in the first round of NIT against Belmont. And I remember the first 1,500 people that got in the game got free donuts. And so I was up in the nosebleeds just eating. I'm just hunking them down. And I remember it was very, very gratifying for the program. And I think the following week we went up to New York and we lost to Ole Miss in the second round of NIT. And so I was like, man, this program could be something. I just felt like the good energy. And then to see year 5, now the tournament's here, I'm just like, man, this is great. So I felt as if I was a part of it, because I can remember year 2, year 3, there was fire passing. And it's give them some time. And so now look. So it is great.
Yeah, and this is a real throwback team, Isaiah, in the sense that you've watched this team grow up together. Alvarado has been a 4-year starter. Moses Wright has been here for 4 years. Right. Even though he hasn't been here the entirety of his college career, you've seen Jordan Usher for 2.5 years since he transferred from Southern Cal. Michael DeVoe has essentially been a 3-year starter. Right. And you don't get that everywhere now in college basketball. It's such an instant gratification sport. You want those one and dones. And, Josh Okogie was fantastic, but he left for the draft after 2 years. So this in many ways calls to mind those teams that become so revered at a school and so beloved, because you see them mature from freshmen to seniors, and you see that growth in their games and get familiar with them. It just makes you want to pull harder for them. And without that experience, there was definitely, I don't think, a chance that Georgia Tech would have gotten in.
Definitely. I feel like we won against Duke this year, Jose's senior year. Was it his elbow that he messed up his freshman year against Duke, I believe?
It was his freshman year. He dislocated his elbow and missed the last 8 games of the regular season. And if you look at his left arm, you can still see this pink crescent-shaped scar there. So it's a constant reminder for him.
Really, yeah. So, and what I hate is we can't be in McKim's Pavilion to enjoy, you know what I mean? Because, man, I feel like the energy would be so amazing.
Yeah, I think it's maybe bittersweet, and I can understand as some fans have that sentiment, because there was limited capacity and there wasn't single game general admission to McCamish, and a lot of fans had to experience this ride from afar. But I think the emotion from Georgia Tech fans was very genuine when they saw them cut down the nets in Greensboro. It was very genuine to see the support that this team gathered as 1 win became 2, became 3, and now going into the NCAA tournament has become 8. So the passion, the enthusiasm, it's still there, just maybe in a different package than what we had grown accustomed to. But I don't think it takes away from how special this has been for the players or for the program. And I certainly hope that it doesn't take away from just how wonderful a ride and an experience that it's been for Georgia Tech fans this season.
Right. It's going to suck to see Jose and Usher go and Moses. Man, they all have extra year eligibility due to COVID, man. That'd be crazy if they bring it back, if they run it back one more time.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. You know, and that's a conversation that all 3 of those guys will have. And Bubba Parham is part of that conversation as well.
Right.
They'll have that conversation individually with Josh Pastner. And look, if this is the legacy that they choose to go out on this season, winning an ACC tournament championship and sending Tech to its first NCAA tournament in 11 years, I think Georgia Tech fans can bid them a very fond farewell. So that's all things that they'll have to sort of meet with their family and their loved ones about. And, you know, selfishly, you'd love to, as a broadcaster, be able to call this nucleus of players for another year. So I, of course, would be in favor of getting a chance to call more Jose Alvarado threes and steals and more Moses Wright dunks and more transition layups for Jordan Usher. But, you know, we'll just wait and see. But if this is the last dance, to borrow the line, it was quite a dance that we all got to see.
Did you I thought about Shimbari. I spoke to Shimbari some weeks ago. Because James Banks was my best friend since middle school, and Shimbari was his roommate. And so I spoke to Shimbari some weeks ago. I just spoke to James earlier. And as they won Saturday, I wondered, how did it feel? Because that previous year, there was a postseason ban. And so no matter what they did, they couldn't make the tournament. And so I thought in my mind, like, what if Shimbari and James got to experience this? And so I think about them a lot, and I just wonder, like, I know definitely, I think one of the underlying questions was the rim protecting presence that James provided. Could Moses do so at a smaller height? And so I was wondering, how good do you think this team would be if James and company, that class was here?
Yeah, you know, I think with James, there's no substitute for the shot blocking that he brought. And Josh has mentioned that numerous times throughout the season that they've had to adjust some of their principles defensively, especially in their zone, because they don't have that rim protector and that mistake eraser under the basket like James provided the last 2 years. And that's something that I think they've missed at times. Now, they've been able to force a high rate of turnovers, and so they've still been effective defensively. But again, when James was that none shall pass presence under the rim, this was a team last year that was 16th in the nation in defensive efficiency. So while Moses playing, you know, by and large at the 5 this year, earned him ACC Player of the Year, you pair him with James, that in itself could make it a very tricky matchup for a lot of teams. As far as James and Shimbari go, first off, James, to me, will always be the mayor of McCamish. I have yet to come across in my 18 years of broadcasting someone more affable, more gregarious, just more fun to be around as a student athlete than James. And I'm just so happy that he's out there, you know, living his professional dreams in Israel. And anytime I get a chance to catch up with James, you can't help but leave with a smile on your face. I hope players like James and Shimbari, they feel some ownership in the success that this team has had, because we saw the beginning of this at the end of last season when James and Shimbari and the rest of this nucleus won 8 of their last 11. We saw that corner starting to be turned last year. And so were it not for the contributions of James and from Shimbari, I don't think you would have seen Georgia Tech have the season that it's having right now, if not for those 2 guys. So I hope those guys, even though, you know, I can understand if it's maybe bittersweet to see them enjoy the success that they wish they could have had for themselves, that they take a lot of pride and ownership of what this team has had to accomplish, because they are standing on the shoulders of what they have built in the preceding years. And James, Shimbari, they absolutely were part of that.
When you first found out James Banks was transferring to Georgia Tech, what did you hear? What did you think?
I heard that this was a 6'11" guy who was a top 50, top 100 prospect, long arms, and I felt really good that there was going to be a line of succession between Ben Lammers and James Banks. And I'll be honest, after Ben Lammers wrapped up, remember, he was ACC Defensive Player of the Year, and was the leading shot blocker his junior and senior seasons in the ACC. I'm thinking, man, that's going to be really hard to duplicate. And then James steps in And he does the exact same thing. And he wins ACC All Defensive 2 straight years. So it's just remarkable to see just such a seamless transition defensively at the 5 spot between Ben and James. And, James, during his sit-out year, he had a lot of refinement that he needed in his post work. But, under the tutelage of Eric Revenell, he became very good in his finishing around the basket. Of course, we know he can throw down. Zion Williamson can tell you that James Banks can throw down. But just to see his polish and his skill set and his repertoire of post moves grow and gain layers from when he transferred here to his senior year, that also was really fun to watch. He became such a more well-rounded post player, working with Eric Revenell and taking that to the court. So it wasn't just defense that James contributed to Georgia Tech. And, again, just it was really gratifying to see James just become such a more complete basketball player and really invest in himself, and Georgia Tech reaping that return on the court the last 2 years.
Right. I believe that athleticism was the difference between Lammers and James, because I know Coach Passion, he always referred to Ben Lammers as a bit of a plotter, whatever that meant. And then there's James, the more athletic, phonetic type of player. But the day he committed to Georgia Tech, I got a call from him at 2, 3 in the morning. He calls me, and I'm at school in Rome, Georgia at the time. And I'm like, I hope it's nothing crazy. I knew he was on a visit in Atlanta. I'm like, man, I'm far away. I don't have a car, so if something happened, I don't know what else to do. He calls me, and he's just like, man, hey, man, I love you. Like he does that from time to time. He's just positive, and I'm just like, okay, what's going on? He's like, hey, man, I'm back home. And when he said that, like, I'm back home, I'm like, all right, because I knew he was on his thing, making his round, trying to find the next home. And for some reason, when I woke up the next morning, the stars aligned was kind of like the thing going through my head, like the stars aligned. I don't know why. And then maybe 3, 4 p.m., I see the post. I'm coming home. James Banks commits to Georgia Tech. And I searched up to see if it was real. And, when Josh left, I kept asking myself, like, now you need another reason to come to Georgia Tech, because I just love the school. I'm like, so what's going to be your reason? James turned around, commits. I come down there like the first week of July. We was in Zelnak, and we were just, just shooting the breeze. And he said, hey, man, because you remember, he got eligible to Tennessee game the morning up, and he had to hurry up.
Oh, I remember that, yeah.
Right. So he's November during my Thanksgiving break. He said, I'm going to put you on will call for the University of Texas Rio Grande Valley game. Like, all right, this is my first time ever on will call. So it's like VIP, so to speak.
Of course.
The energy and mechanics was amazing, man. Like I sat behind the bench. I'm watching Passion and company do their thing. The Boston College game, I sat right next to Josh Passion's parents. I didn't even know. I was having a conversation with them, eating my nachos. I'm like, man, it was just like love coming down to McKenna's Pavilion. But the energy in there was amazing. I'm glad I got another reason to come down to Georgia Tech and see him go. But I do regret I didn't make senior night for James. That was, as a friend, I was like, man, you can make senior night for James. That was crazy. But I would say he does have a lot of a positive spirit. And I could see he left that with the team, so to speak. And I'm not sure who was that vocal leader, but I know somebody picked it up in some capacity. And to watch his team grow was everything and more. But I can't say, as a good friend, to see James go to Georgia Tech, because I kept telling him I need a reason to go back down there. I just love going there. And he was like, come on. And I was going to games. I'm eating nachos and talking to Coach Pastor's parents. Like, I was having the time of my life going to Georgia Tech. And so now I'm just looking for more reasons to come down there.
And I'll tell you this, one of my favorite highlights last year was James getting that transition dunk and posterizing the player from Clemson.
I was just about to say that.
I think the Holy Spirit caught hold of me, Isaiah, because my call on the air was he didn't just put him on a poster, he put him in a crime scene. That was one of my favorite calls, I think, last year from James Banks. Boy, what a dunk, man. Everybody talks about the Zion Williamson dunk at Cameron, and that probably won't be top, but that is a very close second, and you'd have been hard-pressed to even come within shouting distance of a dunk as electrifying as the one he had at Cameron. But, boy, James made it really close that night at Clemson.
Yeah, his ascension, because remember, he didn't start playing basketball late. I think we played in middle school, 8th grade maybe, but his ascension from where he was at Texas to where he ended when he was at Tech was fast, and it was...
Yeah, and when you see somebody transfer, fair or not, your first impressions are going to be set based on the numbers they had in their most previous season, right? Exactly. And so you see James Banks transferring, hey, great, we get another long-arm, shot-blocking, defensive-minded guy, but you see his second year at Texas, who's playing behind some future pros, but he averaged, 1-2 points a game. And, there is that seed of doubt, like, okay, is this somebody that can eventually evolve into a double-digit per game score? But to James's credit, he maximized that year that he had, and just invested in himself, working with Eric Reveneau, who has done just such a fantastic job with the bigs here from the moment he joined Josh Pastner's staff. And, James became a very vital cog in that offense. And, without his ability to finish and catch drop-off passes and lobs, that spread the floor out for Jose Alvarado and Michael DeVoe. We saw those guys work as a tandem last season. And, from going from James to Moses, remember, James and Moses were banging, in practice the last couple of years. So I don't think Moses would have been as effective as he's been this year at the 5, and effective is an understatement because he won ACC Player of the Year. But, getting used to that physicality going up against James in practice, I think prepared Moses for shouldering the workload at the 5 this season. And you see the kind of stat lines that he's had now and where it's led him.
So talk about Moses' ascension. 0-star recruit, tennis. So this is testament to that 5-star development Coach Pastner has been speaking about. So talk about it.
Yeah, Moses came in as a complete shot in the dark. And in this age, finding a diamond in the rough, that's almost extinct because, you have 24/7 recruiting and, everybody is analyzed and broken down and scouted. And there's so many showcases and AAU teams and tournaments. But Moses came in as a true unknown. And even though people tend to forget, I mean, he started his very first game of his freshman year in Shanghai. So, it didn't quite come out of nowhere. He obviously showed enough to Josh and the coaches in preseason where they slid him in as their starting 4-man his true freshman year, even though you knew he had a long way to go. The thing I remember about Moses as a freshman was, better or worse, sometimes as a freshman it was more worse than better. He was never afraid to take the shot. He was never tentative when he had the ball in his hands. He kind of believed and bet on himself that I can make this shot. It didn't always go in, but I think that mindset and that mentality led me to believe that in due time, this was somebody who could grow into a serviceable player. Now, I'd be lying to you, Isaiah, if I thought that at the end of his journey, he'd be ACC Player of the Year. But, the athleticism was something that you saw right out of the chute. His ability to run rim to rim and just, Josh told me one time his freshman year, the thing that I remember just in evaluating him was his legs, just like the striations in his legs, and just physically, you just don't see that in a prospect like that. And you knew that in a college strength and conditioning program, he would become even more hyper athletic, even more muscular, even more of a mismatch. And you see it this year with Moses. The thing that I think has been incredible is he's, why he hasn't shot often, he's close to a 40% 3-point shooter. This was somebody who was, I think at one point in time through his sophomore year, something like 7 for 59 from 3. Yeah. And so the dependability now in his mid-range game is something that has gone so under-noticed, under-reported, under-recognized in the growth of Moses Wright. His ability to get that second jump offensive rebound and finish through contact, just use his long arms. You see all those physical gifts that create such a mismatch, but to me, it's his, ability to score at all 3 levels now that's turned him into an ACC Player of the Year.
Do you have any draft outlooks for some of these guys? Like, do you have any idea?
It's hard for me to get inside the mind of scouts because I look at, and of course I view everything, Isaiah, through gold-colored glasses, as you know. I see somebody like Jose Alvarado and think to myself, who wouldn't want that player on an NBA roster with his defensive prowess and his ability to stick the 3 and just that toughness, you need that in a roster. With Moses, like, oh my gosh, that can translate to the next level. But, GMs and scouts, they view things sometimes through a completely different lens. So, yes, I wish I could peer into my crystal ball and put out my scouting hat and tell you what prospects look like professionally at the NBA level for some of these guys. Right. My hope, though, at the very least, is that those guys get an earnest look, that they get an invite to showcase themselves, whether it's, in a G League or through a 2-way contract or through a camp invite. because I'd bet on any of those guys when push comes to shove that they'll give the best version of themselves and that they can join the likes of Josh Okogie in the NBA.
Right, because I feel like the get old, stay old is great for the program, but, you know, as the juniors and seniors, the NBA scouts, like, they reach the ceiling, which is unfortunate, which I don't understand. But these are still 22, 23-year-old kids. But, hey, what do I know? So.
Yeah, I think the great comp for Jose is Jose Juan Barea, JJ Barea. You know, he was an undersized, you know, Jose's not a mid-major, but JJ Barea was. You know, JJ affected the game with his scoring, his three-point shooting, his steals, his assists, and, you know, he carved out a decade-long career in the NBA. You know, if that's the path that Jose will need to follow, and if Jose needs to prove himself some more, I'd bet on Jose with a chip on his shoulder. I don't know about you, but
oh yeah, for sure.
You'd be wise to bet against that, right?
For sure. I guess the last thing I wanted to ask you, how do you think this affects recruiting? This ACC championship, we're going to bring in a lot of people, and the hype around Georgia Tech grows. Do you think we finally get those five-star guys? Or Patterson's like, hey, those are cool, but let's keep – because the five-star development track has worked tremendously and immensely. So what do you think? He said, hey, 5 stars, come on, or it's like, that's cool, but okay, we're going to keep developing because get old, stay old.
Well, you know, I think this year proved, Isaiah, that you don't need to necessarily have a 5-star to be successful. And Josh has shown that this get old, stay old blueprint works and that it can be self-sustaining. Now, we'll say, you know, because of the success they've had last year and this year, they've signed their highest ranked recruiting class since Josh Pastner came here. It's top 20 in the country. And Debo Coleman, who's coming up from Florida, is the highest ranked recruit that Josh has ever landed at Georgia Tech. So you're already seeing the dividends on the recruiting scale. The recruiting trail, I should say. And also, you know, James Banks and some of these other, and Jordan Usher, they've proven the viability of coming to Georgia Tech as a transfer. And I think Georgia Tech has shown that it has a tremendous niche in getting those bounce back guys. And let's include Shimbari in that conversation as well. And Kyle Sturdivant, I mean, you know, his best basketball is still ahead of him. Right. You know, the Norcross guy who, you know, is coming back with 3 years of eligibility remaining. And I think that transfer route could be a great pipeline for Georgia Tech. And, you know, I know that they're going to evaluate the transfer market pretty heavily in the spring based on which guys decide to pursue their professional goals and which guys choose to come back. But like you said, there are a lot of different ways to build a powerful program that does not involve 5-star guys. There are teams right now, and Georgia Tech beat both of them this year, that are flush with 5-star freshmen who aren't playing in the NCAA tournament. So Josh now has a product that he can sell. He has a proof of concept, proof of success. And I'm excited to see how that'll translate in the years ahead and in the transfer market for Georgia Tech.
Yeah, I'm hoping we can move into that upper tier of the ACC, because I think we're put with like the lower tier, but I think this puts us in the upper echelon of the conference. So
yeah, I mean, you know, look, the blueprint that Josh said was, I want to be like Notre Dame. I want to be like Virginia. As far as getting old, staying old, having veteran experienced guys. And, you know, he's now got the program on a footing where he's able to get old and stay old. And so, you know, it'll be exciting to see that unfold and watch it continue to develop. And, you know, if anybody doubted the coaching chops and the ability to adjust in season, I think Josh Pastner has answered that pretty emphatically this season.
Definitely. Andy Demetra, the voice of the Jackets. Is that what you call yourself?
Yeah, voice of the Jackets always seems pretty uppity to me. I just say, hey, play-by-play voice for Georgia Tech.
Okay, that works.
Broadcaster, whatever you call me, as long as you tune in. That's what means the most to me, right?
Yeah, right. Andy Demetra, thank you so much for coming on the show. You have a blessed day.
Absolutely. Isaiah, best of luck to you, and I can't wait to listen to your podcast in the future here.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much, Mr. Demetra. You stay blessed. Go Jackets.
All right. Go Jackets.